You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and following If I Died Tonight. I had a major computer glitch this week, and I lost some software, and I made some big old mistakes, rookie mistakes on a brand new computer, and I shut that thing down, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to make this 5th episode of this podcast. But I had time to think on my whys and where I hope to go. I'm hoping that you're enjoying the journey, and I'm hoping that I say something that means something. Been podcasting for almost 13 years now, and I've done some great things, yeah. But what I really want to do is continue to use my voice and my talents to help somebody. That's more important to me than download numbers, than anything else. I ain't gonna lie. I want that thing to be huge. I want to be like 5,000 downloads an episode. But what I really want is that if you are on the edge, if you're going through a tough time, if you survived a tough time, if you have overcome some stuff, and you can share your story to encourage somebody else, or you need to hear an encouraging story, an encouraging word, that you let me know so that I can do justice to the time, energy, and money that I put into producing this thing. You know, I was at a gym one time, and I found out that there was this guy who had just lost a fight. He was a mixed martial artist. Dude was scary good. But whoever he fought was better than he was. And I later found out that the guy was actually living in the gym. He was homeless. And he had just lost his job, and he was breaking up with his girlfriend. And he had said to somebody else that he was in a dark place. I understood that part. Here was a guy who was an athlete. I mean, extreme athlete. The guy had endurance for days. The guy could take a jab, could take a kick, could take a punch. He had some serious sustained power. But on the inside, he was just like the rest of us, dealing with life. And right now, he was feeling like he was a failure. And when your mind starts working on you, doesn't matter how strong your body is. When your spirit is broken, doesn't matter how great shape you're in. Now, if you're out of shape, that's even worse. But we all need to know that you can make it, that no storm lasts forever, that you can get through this. You can get out without taking your life. You can get over, around, or through this. This episode is dedicated to the mixed martial artist, to the football player, to the athlete, to the one in the arena. Speak Life Church Incorporated presents If I Died Tonight. This week I got a new friend, Dr. Stacy. I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health, faith, and the stuff that goes on in our heads. The man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows at the end of triumph, of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt, 1910. So, you're out of the ring. You're in this life thing, and things aren't going well for you. Believe it or not, you are not alone. Think about the guy also who is a star football player. And through life, he had one goal. And when he got to the pros, he actually made it. He was injured and his career ended. Yeah. Things like that happen to quite a few of us. It's It's not actually what happens to you. It's how you respond to it all. If I can tell you anything, and that is, you are more than your goals. And sometimes we don't make our goals big enough. And when we put all our eggs in one basket and they fall and they break, you just have to pick it up again and start again, using the same tenacity, the same discipline, the same strength that you've used to master the ring, to master the field, to master your position. You have the power to continue to do great things. You just need to channel that energy, your focus, your drive, your motivation, your inspiration in a different direction so that you can survive this little hurdle that you're in right now, this little dark space, this little short speed bump in time. You feel me? You see, once you get past the athleticism and the things that you've done or haven't completed at this time in your age, you'll find out that the age thing will hit you again. Because there's plenty of us who are in our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, 60s even, who have some unleft stuff that makes us feel like we failed. Even though we've gained a whole lot of stuff, sometimes, you can still get back to that darkness, even when you have a lot. But I'm here to remind you right now that you are not a burden. Don't stay isolated too long. If you're going through some physical pain, let's find some solutions for that. Don't try to self-medicate with weed or alcohol. It'll actually hurt you in the long run, even in the short term, actually. Let's talk to the doctor. She's going to give us some stuff to take us a little bit further. This week, I want to go and take you to the gym. You know, I know a whole bunch of folks who love competition. They love being in a mixed martial arts setting. They love the sweat. They love the hitting. They love all that stuff that you just can't believe they love. But there's another side to the gym, the competition world. There's a side that maybe you're not familiar with. It's the side when there's nobody in your corner. There's a side when you're not in the ring and the lights are not shining on you and people are not cheering your name. It's a time when you're by yourself and a time when you have to think about life stuff. And sometimes the life stuff hurts. This week, I got Dr. Stacy with me to talk about athleticism and depression and some of the stuff that happens to us when we're not in the sunlight, when we're not in the spotlight. Dr. Stacy, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Webb. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
In my little story, I talked about a guy who is used to competing and he's an athlete and he's already working out, but there's something missing and he's having what he says is dark thoughts. He says his head's not in a good place. Is that common?
Sometimes that can happen, especially if things are not going well in sport or in play, that things can feel complicated. And I think what's hard for a fighter, if you will, literally, is that they're accustomed to formulas that 1, 2, 3, punch, and boom, he's down. And so to not be, but life is messy, of course.
Yes. And
to not be able to kind of enact that same type of thing and be in control of it can be very difficult.
The lack of control is an issue for a lot of people, and we don't realize how big our control things are. Can you explain that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. So, I think that all of us at some level like to be in control, like that we want things to be our way and to have a sense of agency and ownership for what's happening in our lives. But what we know is that is not life, and that things happen out of our control all the time. You lose a fight or a game, or you get outplayed, or you end up with an injury, or somebody in your family dies unexpectedly, or you end up being levied with a tax bill, or just all kinds of things can happen in your life suddenly that are out of control and can be very disconcerting if your main way of moving in the world is controlling everything or trying to control everything. at least.
What would be a good tip for this person? What could you recommend for them in the short term?
I think one of the things is I think it's important to accept that everything is not in your control and that suffering is a part of life. Sometimes I think in our toxic positivity way that we believe, well, if you do step 1, step 2, step 3, that everything will be great. And if you just think it positive, that it'll be positive. And if you think big thoughts, that big things will happen. But that's not unrealistic. That's unrealistic. That suffering is a part of life. And I think there is wisdom in being able to accept that, because what it allows you then to do is build muscle to work through that suffering rather than being stuck in the fact that suffering is happening to you. I also think that there is wisdom in controlling the things that you can control and being aware of what those are and being grateful for those things as well.
Let's look at the movies. Let's look at Rocky. In the very first Rocky, it was a guy who was poor, who was not educated, and he was putting a lot of his life and his energy into getting out of the gutter, into making it big. And there's quite a few people who also have been struggling their whole life. They've been fighting their whole life, and now when they get to this next hill, they're hoping that this next fight or this next something will take them over, and when it doesn't, they're stuck.
Right. And I love that story because I think that it really can interact with a lot of different things. So there are often times that we end up putting all of our balls in one basket, and that may or may not be your only basket to put your balls in, if you will, no pun intended.
Okay.
And so with the case with Rocky, can you imagine that he saw this fight as his way out of the poverty that he had suffered as a child, and how much effort? I mean, we think about I think about NFL players who started playing football with Pop Warner.
Right.
Football. And so then they're chasing that dream from the age of 6, 7, 8, or 9. And then to actually get to a place where it's time to move to the next level, whether that be college or actually to the league, how disconcerting it can be if that doesn't happen, or the chance of that not happening can feel really pretty awful. And especially if you don't feel like you have other choices. You understand what I mean? And so, and that can cause you to kind of cast off restraint that the Bible says, if I can go there, that's okay.
Yes.
That we die without a vision. And sometimes our vision is impacted by what we can see around us. And if the only way that you can see out of your poverty is boxing or football or hip hop or whatever the case may be, that it will cause people to shrivel and die, and maybe not physically, but that the dream to die and the ability then to dream something else becomes difficult. I think about my own self. And so what my education has offered me is choices and options. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I could be a TV psychologist. I could be a psychotherapist. I could have a private practice. I could be a university professor. Like, there are a myriad of things that are available to me because my education offers me options. But without that, and without knowing that oftentimes people don't have those same options, and it can take them into a very dark place.
The football players, I know you hit something there. There's some guys that they've been banging on people since they were little kids, and then they get their chance at the league, and everybody doesn't become a pro. And some manage to become bouncers in clubs. Some are bodyguards. There's almost like a fraternity of guys that that never made it to the pros, but they've been in on that track for a minute, and they too are often off rail in a dark place, waiting and looking for something. So there's another group of people, of men in particular, that have been A-type personalities their whole life, and now
Right.
they're floundering.
Well, and part of it is because they've invested so much into it, both time, money, and even physically with their bodies. That investment really, and I feel like the service that we do oftentimes is we stress the league, or this is the goal, or that can be stressed. But we don't say that only a small, minute, very, very tiny group of people make it to the league. You think about, now football rosters are huge, 75, 60 people.
Yeah.
But you think about a basketball roster.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking maybe 20 people, and I think I'm being generous there. And so that only the elite of the elite of the elite make it to being able to do this thing professionally. And I think that sometimes we do a disservice without giving people other options, so that if the league situation doesn't work out, that they have something else to pursue beyond that. Yeah. And I even think that there's something to be said about being clear about what your purpose is. And then once you get clear about what your purpose is, it allows you to pursue it despite the vehicle. You see what I mean? And so let me give you an example from my own life. So my purpose is to help heal the brokenhearted, to help people live lives of hope, health, and healing, right? I am confident that is why I was put on the earth. How I do that looks different in all the time. I mean, I think what we're currently doing right now is a way of me enacting that. And so we can get people anchored in what their purpose is, how they do it, although disappointment might be a part of that, it becomes a little less relevant than if they make the league or not. I mean, I know somebody who actually made the league, and on the first punt of the first game in a non-contact, got a non-contact injury, right? And was out of the league forever. And so those things happen frequently, I think more frequently than what we know. And I think part of what makes it also complicated is that part of how athletes see themselves, part of their identity, part of their core identity, can oftentimes be connected with what they can do with their bodies, or connected with being an athlete, or connected with being a sport. And when they move out of that, they lose part of themselves in that process. I see it all the time when athletes are injured, that they lose part of themselves because the way that they see themselves fundamentally is connected to the actual sport itself. And not only do they lose identity, but sometimes they lose community, they lose motivation, they lose purpose and interest in doing the things that they would typically enjoy. And all of those things equal together depression. And it is that depression which can lead to hopelessness, and that hopelessness can lead to some of those dark thoughts that you started with.
Yeah, and you can add to that smoking weed or drinking a lot of alcohol, which also changes your something. It
does. Well, and what people have to remember is that alcohol is a depressant. And so the high that you feel from alcohol, all of those things are oftentimes short and temporary. Yeah. But the rebound effect of that is a depressant effect of the alcohol. And then weed is just going to lead to lethargy as well. And so you put those two together, and it's an interesting cocktail for the blues.
Yeah, yeah. So you're spiraling down. You're dealing with a lot of loss of identity, loss of community, loss of motivation, loss of purpose, loss of interest in yourself. And then you're thinking, all right, let me self-medicate. Let me go out with the fellas. And you end up afterwards feeling even worse than before.
That's right. That's right.
And don't throw in a relationship issue, which almost like more than 50% of us have, which always doesn't go the right way all the time. So add a negative relationship in there, and then bam, you're really kicking the can.
Indeed. I don't know, and you can cut this out, Rev, if you want to. There's a situation where a family that a former football player killed some people
Yeah, South
this
Carolina
week.
just recently.
So I don't know what the story is. So what's the background around that?
I don't know. I'm gonna read the press thing for this episode too, so we can talk about it a little later.
Yeah.
No, another episode.
Sounds good.
But it's connected.
Okay, that sounds good. Oh, you bet. And we see it all the time. Yep. Definitely.
So where do we go? Where do we go when we feel like this?
So, of course, I'm a therapist, so you know where I'm going to go first.
Okay.
I think that when you find yourself in that dark place, that it's important to reach out to get some help from somebody who can be helpful to you. That oftentimes you get beyond yourself, you get beyond what your friends could do, what your mama, what your pastor, whomever can do, and that you need to seek the help of a professional. In the same way, if you tore your MCL or your Achilles or whatever the case may be, that you would be moving towards getting some medical help. And this is the same thing. And so if your mind or your heart is heavy, then it's time for you to reach out to get some help. And you can do that before it gets heavy, even as a proactive thing, or prophylactic, if you will, to really kind of boost yourself, boost your productivity, boost your play on the field, in the ring, whatever the case may be, to be able to do that too. That there are lots of athletes that use sports psychology as a way to really boost their performance, and I support that 100%. I do think that it's important to try to revert back to some type of spiritual anchor as well, and whatever that is for you, to really be able to move back to that or move towards that if you haven't had it in your life. And if you're not quite ready to seek the help of a professional and or some type of faith thing, that I think that you reach out to somebody and you don't sit in it alone, because when you get in it alone, it just grows. The darkness just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And when you pull somebody in with you, they can shed a little light in that darkness. And what we know is that darkness has to give way to light. And so pulling some light into the situation can make it less enormous and easier for you to climb out of it eventually.
I like that. Explain how the science and the faith thing work together. Like, I didn't know that you would say the therapist and having a faith thing was in the same sentence.
Oh no, they go together for me. In fact, they're inextricably tied, Rev. So I would say this. I think that it's like a good 1-2 shot, right? Mm-hmm. In the sense of, here's what we know. We know that medication and therapy work together better than any two by itself, right? Mm-hmm. And then you put a little faith and some, you put a little therapy and medication with some Jesus. That's like a 1-2-3 punch. And so there's the opportunity to really knock down some stuff, because I think that part of what our faith identity brings us is something bigger than us.
Yes.
And something that we are less alone in the world. And even though we may be dealing with disappointment and grief and loss in the midst of what's happening, it still allows you to lean on something other than yourself. People often say, well, it's a crutch. And you know what I say to that? It sure is. It sure is.
Thank God for a crutch.
Is. And so if you know that you're struggling and that you might need a crutch for some time, and I believe in that wholeheartedly.
I'm so glad you said that. I mean, I totally believe it, but I had to go there just so that I'm hoping that you would pull that thing out, and you did. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you bet. Yep.
Faith.
The other thing that I was
go ahead.
Faith. I mean, it really is. No, it just is really important, and part of what it does too is that being able to see something bigger than yourself, I think, allows you to instill a little bit more hope in you as well. That things will get better. Like I've been a therapist now for 25 years or more, and I've seen some people in some dark places over those years. And I know what I know for sure is that when you reach out to get help and then you actually are actively engaged in that help, it can get better. And even if you think, whoever is listening, that you're in the darkest place and nobody could ever help you, I disagree with you 100%. I know that somebody can help you, that there's something out there to make it better and or different for you, and so that you don't have to die in that hole of darkness that you're feeling and experiencing.
That is so cool. Yes, indeedy. I'm talking to Dr. Stacy, and she will be back on this show. I haven't even asked her yet, but she's coming back. Thank you, Doc. She
You're welcome.
She does
My pleasure.
a whole bunch of stuff, and as time goes on, we will share how you can reach Dr. Stacy and see all the stuff she does. But in the meantime, if you need help, just realize that you're not by yourself. You don't have to be by yourself. That there is nothing new under the sun. And I'm not saying that to little or belittle what you're going through. It's just that all of us have been in tough times. All of us have gone through some stuff. And the key for it is for you to realize that you are not alone, that somebody will be listening. Somebody's waiting to take you out of where you are to another spot. And just like you relied on your coach, on your sensei, on your guru, there is somebody who is waiting to help you. And if I can help you, I'm here.
Kenn, can I give one number that I think would be helpful to your listeners?
Absolutely.
And that's the National Suicide Hotline. And so that number is 800-273-8255. So 800-273-8255. That's a great place to start. And it's 24/7.
Or 273-TALK.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Stacy, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Likewise. Take care.
If you are in crisis, call the toll-free National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All calls are confidential. Or you can hit them online at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Now, ladies, if you're listening, you know that I use a lot of male pronouns in this thing this week, but it was dedicated to the guys that I have seen before. It was past experiences. I know that you also go through a lot of stuff that we don't, actually. And I hope to address some of that in the future. I'm not leaving you out at all. Just going with the known right now. Or what I'm more familiar with. You are also very important. And I'm glad that you're here.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life.
All right, my friend, that's it for this week. I want to thank you for listening, downloading, and being a part of If I Die Tonight. Let me know if I've done something right. Let me know if I've done something wrong. Links will be in the show notes. And please check out ifidiedpodcast.com because I've been working over there. Also, you can check it out on kenspodcast.com. We got 2 sites. Special thanks again to Dr. Stacy. You can find out about her podcast called Being the Dot, Blacks Thriving in White Spaces. Check out Dr. Stacy over there. And until next week, just in case nobody else has told you this today, I love you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until then, shalom, baby.